Should you resolve all of them? Yes. Good night, folks. That's okay. So there's probably a little more discussion than that, I think. I, I mean, I think on anything more non-trivial than a Hello World sample program, it's not going to be possible to solve every exception. On production level stuff, that's just, there's too many variables involved, too many different customers using it too many different ways on too many different systems with too many different networks. It's just, or too many different browsers. It's that then the browsers get updates and, it's just, I think it's almost impossible to solve every exception. So assuming that is a true statement for whatever particular product you're working on, which would be most of them that I've ever run into that are production products, right? What do you do about that? How far do you go with exceptions? And which ones should you solve?
Yeah, so what I hear you asking is kind of, I guess, the triage question. If you can't do all of them, which one should you do?
Right.
And I guess I'm thinking like volume should be a factor. So if you suddenly have something that's definitely, there's a significant impact to the application vis-a-vis the amount of traffic. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have tons of volume, um, potentially impact, like if it's customer losing data, that's definitely, as opposed
Yeah.
to a random error message that they may get on a particular page. And also, what was the other thing I was thinking about? Um, I don't know if immediacy plays a part as well, but
I think it does to an extent. Also, I mean, this is all caveat with it depends on your product and who your customer base is and what you actually are doing with your product, and how mission critical your product is to your customers. So, but yeah, I think we're talking about majority case here. Um, like one of the triage things that we do internally is how many users are affected and how often are they affected. If it's users don't see it, this is a back-end problem, okay, that's a low priority issue unless it's causing massive speed impacts, but in that case users would be seeing it.
yeah.
So one of the first things we try to assess is what impact does this have on the users, if any. And if none, they go to the back of the triage queue.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get to them someday. Maybe. They're not important. Because, we get all kinds of little weird errors. Like, somebody hits a URL wrong, so you get a URL error. Or they put in a wrong number, so we get, the automated email system says, hey, I don't have an email for this thing, an email template for this, or, and that doesn't matter, right? I don't need to chase down every one of those. And with the number of customers we have, those things pop up quite a bit. In fact, we started ignoring some of them. We just configured those out of our error tracker because it's just noise. But they are exceptions. So, that's a good example of you don't really need to fix every exception. It's sometimes pointless and just a waste of time. So that's kind of our first hurdle.
Do you have is it set up to auto resolve on deployments?
Yes, we auto resolve on deployments. We're actually using for most of our products, we're actually using App Signal, and as well as we use App Signal on the engineering side, and we use Datadog on the infra side. So our deployments reset App Signal. They close all existing errors and just will reopen them if they reappear. But we do have some that we just config out. We say ignore these type of errors because we got a ton of them and they're absolutely useless. We don't care that they happen. So, I mean, should you strive to fix every exception? Well, I mean, in a perfect world, sure. If you had unlimited time and unlimited resources, why not? But that's never the case.
Yeah, like for example, ones that I don't resolve, I'll get some random error and it's looking like it's coming from, you know, a country, a different country with a quite unusual browser.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what is this? Or, I mean, there's also a lot of spamming things like they try to contact the IP address or they try to contact, um, as opposed to a domain name, or they're trying to look for PHP URLs. And a lot of times I look at those and I just ignore them.
Yeah.
I mean, because unless it becomes they are truly hammering the site,
Mm-hmm.
causing a lot of a performance issue because they're trying to cause as many exceptions as possible.
Like a DOS or something.
Yeah, yeah. So like I haven't actively tried to resolve those. Presumably there would be a way to resolve them or ignore them or swallow them, but um, I haven't looked into it just because their frequency is relatively low compared to the other traffic.
Right. And bigger fish to fry with your time, right?
Yeah, yeah. And like for example, I do a scanning of an external scan from a web application scanner.
Mm-hmm.
And that always fires up a number of Ruby on Rails things that are, hey, it's not exceptions are popping because this, things like this is not an acceptable. Oh, what is the term? Like it doesn't do some sort of options or a patch or I don't know. There's certain exceptions that are popping up that it's testing. And I just
Right.
know that at the time of the month where the scan happens, I'm going to get 10 or 15 exceptions coming through that, I haven't looked into how to resolve. So I haven't dedicated any time to figure out, okay, how could I resolve these 15 or ignore them or swallow or, something.
Right.
So that's an
Yeah.
example where I have chosen to actively ignore them.
Yeah. So I think, if let's run under the assumption we're talking about production environment things that have customers that use them. Um, I think the first step is this actually affecting my customers? Because if
Yeah.
it's not, there's no reason to spend any time on it. And you will get exceptions that have zero effect on anybody. So I think that's a first important distinction to make. And then once you figure out, okay, yes, this is affecting customers, well, okay, how many and how often? Because, if I just put something up and all my customers are down, I better jump on those exceptions like yesterday. But if we've had a release out for 3 weeks and one customer one time has an exception and we can't reproduce it ever, that's not something to really jump on as hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you use that exception as kind of a breadcrumb to make sure you don't have other things going on that are more problematic, but just to swallow that exception for the sake of not having an exception ever pop up is kind of useless, I think.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.